So it says we are live, but I don't see anything appear. There's also always a little delay. There it is. All right, welcome to this online version of Product Tank Brussels. Today we have Bryan. Normally Bernard should join in when he has time. So for now we only have Bryan. So first, I don't know who is there online. You can use the live chat. If you have questions, I will pick them up and ask them to Bryan or Bernard when he joins in, and then we'll do an experiment, see how far this goes. So it's the first one. For those who don't know Product Tank, we're part of Mind the Product. We have 140 events on a regular basis worldwide where we try to do local and join local product managers together, talk together, discuss, etc. But I thought, let's do an experiment and reach out to product managers across the world and learn from them as well, because I think we can do great things together. So maybe Bryan, you can take 5 minutes to introduce yourselves, who you are, what you do, what you love about product management, etc.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the introduction. Before you all hopped on, I was saying the exact same thing. I was like, well, this will be a fun experiment. And that's exactly what this is. So hopefully you guys get some value out of it and we continue to kind of build the product management community together. So super happy to be here. We'll see how far it goes and what interesting questions you all have. But my name's Bryan. I'm currently a senior product marketing manager at AHA. And if for those of you that don't know, AHA is a road mapping software SaaS company. I just joined AHA about 5 months ago, so I'm relatively new. So if you have specific AHA questions, I'll certainly try to answer what I can. But my background before going full-on product marketing is in product management. So I spent several years in the fintech, financial services technology space, working for a small startup that then got acquired by a large corporation here in the States. And we made mobile banking, online banking, white label products for then banks and credit unions all across the States that rolled those out. So super regulated space, but also very interesting. So there's a lot of fintech startups, I'm sure you all are aware. So it was a pretty fun space to be in. My background before landing in product management is really on the marketing side. I've kind of dabbled between ad agencies as like a writer and a digital producer to then getting into software with that startup. So I've kind of, my true background is marketing. That's kind of why I ultimately landed at AHA on the product marketing team. So I've kind of dabbled in both shoes, product marketing and product management. And that's a short little intro about myself.
Okay, thank you very much. Bryan, what is product management for you?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think, the term product management, I mean, even just doing a Google search, like you'll get so many different things, so many different answers to that. Even when you're looking at job descriptions, as I was searching for kind of my next career jump and all that, I even noticed you have to be really careful reading job descriptions of product manager because they mean something different to every company, right? And I think that's the root of it. It really depends on the company. If the company is comes from two product people, or the founders are product people who have built products from scratch, built companies, that's going to mean something very different than maybe a sales-led organization where it's salespeople that are really driving the culture and the vision and all that. So really, it does depend on the company. I think that's a given. But really, I think of product management as figuring out how to bring value to users and marrying that up with the business objectives for the company. So how can what is the minimal amount of work we can do to ship something that's meaningful, valuable, usable, beautiful, all those things to our users, right? So it's constantly trying to find value for our users and then shipping that out to them to help them solve their problems.
Okay. I have a question from Eduardo. What does it mean to be a product manager at AHA?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about the team structure at AHA. So we have on the product marketing side, we have product marketing managers. And then obviously on the product said, we also have product managers. So I'll kind of talk about both those. So on the product marketing side, we're responsible for all of, driving all of our content. We do a go-to-market every single week. So we're shipping something new every week to our users. So that involves a blog post and a system broadcast and social tweets that go out. So a lot of content. We drive a lot of content on the marketing side. On the product management side, that's really kind of what I just described. It's we have a couple product managers who are constantly evaluating and updating our roadmap. So they're reviewing all the ideas coming in from you all, from customers, from our public ideas portal. They're looking at our own internal goals and objectives and trying to figure out how to prioritize things. But they really are the ones charged with owning the roadmap, meaning they're making the decisions backed by data, hopefully, but they are owning the roadmap and setting forth the course of all the features that we're going to build over this next 6 months, next 12 months, next 18 months.
Okay. I have a follow-up question on that one. How important is customer, user feedback for you?
Yeah, great question. It's super valuable. So we have a public ideas portal. It's part of the AHA software that you get as a user, but we use it ourselves. And that's one of the beautiful things about working at AHA. We use our own software for literally everything. We run our entire company through the tool itself. But that public ideas portal allows anyone to make a comment, to make a suggestion, and our product managers review that every week. It doesn't, we say that and sometimes like, well, that's a lot of time. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are making a decision on every comment or every idea, but they're at least reviewing it, right? So they're saying, yep, let's merge this idea with this one over here, or yep, that's an interesting idea. I need to come back to it in 6 months. We made a blog post, I don't have it off the top of my head, about how many ideas we reviewed over 2017, and it was thousands. I mean, it was ridiculous. But it's super important. I mean, the customers are the ones using the software. They're using it in their day-to-day work. So if there's a problem that they see, or they're using it in some unique way, that's going to be super valuable for us. We often find that someone who submits an idea, it's not so much about just, oh yeah, doing exactly what that person said, but it's really diving deeper and trying to figure out, well, what problem are they really trying to solve? They said they wanted this new header or this new functionality. Well, is that really solving the problem? Or is that just a Band-Aid? So we do actually lots of back and forth with those customers and really dive into, take away the solution that they have in their head and just think about like, well, what problem are you really trying to solve? Because we may be able to solve it in a different way.
And how do you merge those hundreds of ideas with your company strategy? Because I guess the company has a strategy for the product as well.
Yeah, we do. So every idea coming in, we can merge ideas together. So similar ideas can kind of become one, but they're all linked as just record types. But then eventually when we say, yep, you know what, it makes sense to build this thing, we're going to promote this idea to a feature. And that's really the flow for us. Everything starts out as an idea. There may be some back and forth thinking through it, all that, kind of research work. And then it makes sense to promote it to a feature. At that point, you're not deciding exactly how or all the requirements. You're just saying, yes, we know we want to do this. And now it's going to be a feature. Once it's a feature, then we can connect it to our strategy. So you can say, feature A actually connects to this goal and to this strategic initiative. So then that way they're interlinked, and then you know exactly why you're working on the thing you're working on. And AHA does that in our software, but I think just fundamentally, whatever software you're using, it doesn't matter, right? Like if you're able to connect the work you're doing to a specific goal, like that's going to be huge. Help you figure out how to prioritize, help you, explain to upper management why the heck you're working on what you're working on, all those things.
So if I can rephrase and understand correctly, so you really turn around the idea of building software 100% from the user and try to map the requests coming from your consumer, from your customer, towards your strategy.
Yeah, so I would say the ideas coming in from the consumers, from our users, is one input. It's not 100%, right? It's one input that is, weighted strongly, but we also have our own, business objectives and things that we talk about internally. So really, I think the art of product management is how do we marry those two things up, right? We have our own internal goals, metrics, all those things that we want to hit. and then we have all these ideas. There's going to be some overlap, but it's, kind of that product manager's job to figure out, well, does this great idea, does that really align with, the strategy that we've set at the corporate level? There's a lot of great ideas, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense for us because it's not the strategic decision, way that we're going. So it's really kind of marrying those two ups. But the ideas from users is one input. Ideas from internal AHA employees is another input. There's all these inputs, and I think that's the craft of product management, like balancing all those inputs and then making a decision.
Valuable, usable software.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, nice. It's linked to what is a product for you? Would be the ideal product for you?
Oh, interesting question. I think this is going to sound really basic. I think everyone really values, and I know I do, just really simple software. And there's lots of great examples like that. And I know we talk about things should be beautiful and things should be but really I just value really simple software. There's lots of, I even think of like online forums, right? There's lots of forums online, and forums go back plenty, 20, 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And some of them look horrible, right? But they're still really active because it's dead simple, right? You can ask a question, you can search, people answer you, like it builds kind of this community. And I love stuff like that. And that's a really simple example, but just things that serve a purpose, and it's dead simple to use. I don't need all these pop-ups telling me what to do or all that. And granted, it's lovely when the software is beautiful. It makes you want to use it more. But at the end of the day, for me, I just love things that are simple and you clearly know what the purpose of it is and you're getting value out of it. So
if I can put that back to AHA, you've spent a lot of efforts in user testing, in user validation, etc. Can you explain a bit more about the process?
Yeah, good question. So we do, AHA specifically is really metric driven. So we measure everything. We're constantly doing A/B testing. And even on the marketing side, we're A/B driven. We're doing A/B testing on headlines and different images and all that stuff. But when we roll something out, we often will, the UX team really owns that. So we have a couple UX designers who own all that kind of research. If they're kicking up a new feature or a new design for something, they're gonna, in their design sprints, they're gonna do that research, and they do testing internally with other AHAs, but then they also reach out to current customers and get on a chat like this and have them walk through it. But really, they're owning that whole process of doing the research, and then they're bringing that data back to the product team and helping them make that, it's let the data kind of speak for itself. In all honesty, when you get to that point, we may all like option A, but you know what? The data told us option B because it, for whatever reason. So it makes sense to go with option B.
Okay, I have two questions from Vincent. I will ask the first one. What steps does a product go through before it's deployed to the end user? And what's the product manager's role in there?
Yeah, great question. So really the product manager sees the idea through the whole life cycle. You may hear that term a lot. So we kind of talked about how an idea or everything kind of starts out as an idea, whether it's internal or it's something you thought of or something that the product team thought of, but it starts out as an idea, makes it way to a feature. For us, when it's a feature, that's when we're writing the user stories and building out all the requirements for it. When that kind of comes to life and that evolves, then it gets put in a release, and then for AHA we ship weekly. So every week we're shipping things out, and then when it ships, there's typically one larger feature. I mentioned we do what's called a go-to-market every week. So that's usually something that we want to tell the world about. There's lots of little things that get shipped, but it's not worth we don't need to let you all know we fixed this one little bug or we updated this little thing. So for us, the go-to-market is kind of the main feature that we want to let the world know about. So at AHA, the product manager actually owns kind of the positioning. They write up for us an internal document that's called just positioning statement. And they're going to, that's really, how are we positioning? How are we telling this to people. What is the story about this new feature? Why should people care? They help answer those things. And then it's a collaboration between product management and product marketing. So then product marketing kind of takes the ball, and we craft and write the blog post, the social post, the message that's going to appear in the app when you log in the next time. But the product manager approves all that stuff. So they review the blog post to make sure it's accurate for, you know, that we're talking about the feature in the right way. But it's this really nice, tight collaboration. But then they own it all the way through to when it ships. So then they're kind of on the table for, yep, the support document's up, the blog post is accurate, all these things are linked together, and they see it all the way through. And then after it ships, it's, you know, repeat that process over and over for each week, really, for all these big features.
So there's no competition between a product marketing manager and a product manager?
Nope, we're really working hand in hand. And I've worked with, you know, other product managers who have been product managers and went product marketing, and vice versa. We just own different pieces of that puzzle. You know, the product manager is going to be really heads down on defining the feature, building out the requirements, writing the user story, working with our engineering team to build it, test it, all of those great things. On the flip side, the product marketing team, we're going to be focused on, hey, they're building all these great things. How are we going to tell the world about it? You know, do we need to do digital advertising? Do we need to do a blog post? Do we need to make a YouTube video? All this. So ours is more like content driven, and how are we going to tell everyone about this new feature?
Interesting. The other question from Vincent is, how do product managers make sure the vision and the strategy of AHA is clear for all the parties involved in the product process?
Really good question. It goes back to a little bit what I was talking about. So I'll give a little more background on this, but everyone at AHA is remote. So that's why you all see me in my home office as our guest bedroom at our house. So we're all remote all over the world. We have a handful of people in the UK, folks in Hawaii, South Africa. I'm in the middle of the States in Minneapolis. But because we're all remote, we get together twice a year. So every 6 months we get together. And at the beginning of the year, we roll out the strategy for the year. So we start working on that obviously before we meet. But when we are all together for this week-long on-site, we go through and each team presents their goals. And these are really specific goals. You know, how many more users do we want to get? How much time in the application? All these things. But each team goes through their goals. So the product team has goals. And then on the marketing side, we have goals too. And our goals will be around like, well, how many people do we want to get to sign up for a trial? How many trial users are we going to try to convert from a trial to a paid account? All those sorts of things. And we set those goals, and we set them in 6 month increments. So we'll be focused on the first half of 2018, what we're in now. And then we'll get together in that first half mark. And then we'll review where we're at. And then we'll start working towards our goals for the second half of the year. And that's important to set them up front, because then every feature that we worked on, like I said, in the AHA application, every feature is a little card. Again, I don't necessarily think if you're using AHA or not, this is still important. But every card is a feature. And then on that feature card, we can connect it. So there's a drop down and you say, well, what goal does this map to? And what initiative does this belong to? So by you doing that, by physically connecting it, then when you go to report and all these things, you know exactly why you're working on what you're working on. And if you're working on a bunch of features that aren't connected to a goal, not necessarily do you have to stop working on them, but it's a good indicator. Like maybe you should stop and think, well, why are we working on these 5 things that aren't connected to anything, right? If they really don't map to any of your goals, it's usually a good indicator that they're probably not that important. And maybe you can lower them in priority and put them back in the backlog and revisit it again in 3 months or something like that.
Okay, I have a follow-up question from Eduardo on this one. What are the key analytics for your product, and how do you communicate it to your remote teams?
Yeah, great question. Like I said, we track literally everything. I know a lot of companies say that, and teams I've been on say that, but man, AHA is the first place where I actually believe it, because I can see it every day. But yeah, we track literally everything. But there's lots of key indicators for us. How much time you've spent in the app versus how many different types of records you've created. So everything in our app you can really think of as just like a record type. Like if you create a notebook or create a feature or create a release, those are all just different records. So, those are good indicators, right? If someone has created all of these records, thousands, that's a really good indicator that they're going to convert into a paid user. So those are just a few examples. But then on the back end of AHA, we have our own dashboard. So obviously nothing you all would have access to, but we have our own dashboard that displays a lot of these key metrics for us. So on any given week, we can kind of see how we're trending and look at things, month over month, or even a snapshot of the whole year. I don't have much background on, what that was built on or anything like that, because I just came into AHA 5 months ago, but they did put a lot of, I can tell they put a lot of time into it, because it is this real-time live dashboard that kind of has all of our key metrics that anybody in AHA can get to at any time. And I think that's important. I've worked on other teams where we have tons of data, but it's kind of locked away. It's like you always have to go to, JJ knows that, or whoever it may be, right? Like you have the one data guy, and he's got it in some database somewhere. So you have to ask him for it. So you ping him on Slack. He gets to it 3 days later. But it's like, no, I needed that 3 days ago because I wanted to make a decision, right? So I think that's the key, is like making that data accessible to the entire team, not just, the engineers, or not just the product team.
Yeah, so I mean, you keep everybody aligned on the same goal, on the same data, on the same activities to take. And so there could not be a misalignment between the strategies of the product marketing, between the strategies of at least the goals of the product marketing, goals of the product manager. But I guess sometimes there's some screw up somewhere. So are there cases that sometimes the product manager is doing stuff which is completely unsellable or unmarketable?
Yeah, there's definitely times, even on marketing, where it may not be a concrete goal, but something may have happened that week that we just feel very strongly that we need to do this. And that could be a variety of things. But again, we always try to let the data speak for ourselves, and we'll take that to the leadership team to say, you know what, this isn't a goal, but we feel strongly that we need to do this week because of X, Y, Z, and here's the data. So we're going to go ahead and do it. And the other flip side of that is sometimes we want to just run lots of, we talked about this being an experiment. We're big believers in experiments with AHA as well. So you may want to try something, and it kind of goes into the testing aspect of it. But if there's something you want to try in order to help you make a better decision, we may roll out a small little feature to a really small subset of our AHA users. To really learn if that new thing is valuable or not, or if anyone used it. And we can learn a lot from that. So we may roll something out, learn that, no one used it, it was kind of pointless, and then decide, yep, we're not going to do that. And that was never really tied to a goal. It was more or less an experiment. So we do a lot of those kind of short, easy experiments to help us, kind of tie back to the goals that we set before.
Okay, I have a question which is more or less aligned to it by Ed. In your case, where do you think that a product manager should be? In which department? Internal organization, marketing department, IT, or any other?
Yeah, I'm smiling because this question comes up all the time.
Yeah, it's a classical
I've asked at the last team I was on, we debated about this all the time. And we went through different, we tried different things, and it was a mess. I'll just say it. And again, like everything in product management, I think it depends on the company. And I can speak for AHA. At AHA, product marketing is just under marketing. So we have marketing, and then we have product marketing, digital marketing, content, and PR. So that's kind of our umbrella. On the product side, we group product and UX and design together. So we have someone who leads that team, and they're kind of the director of product management. Underneath him is a couple product managers, but then also we have a couple UX designers, and then some other designers as well. So at AHA, we kind of group product and UX together. And then kind of the third pillar is obviously our engineering team and all the development work. And then the fourth pillar for us is our customer support. We don't have a sales team, but kind of our customer success, who's answering all the tickets and calls. They kind of act as our sales team. So that's kind of the four pillars of AHA. I've been on my previous team. Product management was its own thing. Design was kind of had its own director, but then product management had its own director. So we always looked at it as, engineering, design, and product management. So we had a director, and then there was 3 product managers, myself being one of them. And that worked okay for a while, but then we even got into debates, like I said, about we wanted to be more collaborative with UX and design, and we ran into all sorts of hurdles. So it really depends on the company. I think it's important to, don't just because that's the way it is, just stick with it. I encourage you guys, if you can, to challenge it, right? If you think something's not right or you want better ways to collaborate, try it for a couple weeks or, and that can look like a lot of different things. It doesn't mean you have to change the org chart, and maybe it means you move your physical desk and you go sit with the designers for a couple weeks to see if there's some more efficiencies, or there's a lot of, little tweaks you can test out.
So if I can think something that I've been studying a while in implementing product management in our own organization is you don't work with, if I hear correctly, with autonomous teams, meaning you have a product manager, developers all tied together in one thing. You still have somehow a split there.
Yeah, yep. And that looks different too for every team. At AHA, it's really the product managers are kind of working really hard to define the features. They're setting the strategy. They're kind of in charge of the why, the when, and the what. And that's probably a really good way to think about it. So why is, well, why are we building this thing? The what is, what release does it belong to? When do we need it to go out? And what, are the details, the user story, the requirements, all of that. And then when that all gets solidified and written up, then it's going over to engineering as the how, right? The how piece that is kind of what engineering is in charge of. And they're certainly involved and collaborative in that whole process, but product managers are really leading that charge of the why, the when, the what. And then we're going to let engineering figure out the best way to build it, and that's the how. So in our world in AHA, all of our features, when they're ready to be built, those get assigned out by the engineering leads. So you may be working on one feature this week, but then the next week you may be working on a completely different part of the application. And then the next week you may be making an update on the web, aha.io, the marketing website for the marketing team. So it cycles through, so you're working across everything. On my last team that I was a part of, we built these small teams, and you would literally work with that team for a good 6 to 9 months, because we were rolling out these really big features, and that's how long the feature took to actually ship out. So there would be a product manager, a designer, a couple, a handful of engineers, front end, back end, all of that stuff, and you would work as this small group for that entirety of that feature.
Yeah. So yeah, I see. I understand. But I think you did a good collaborative way of working with your engineering team, because if you have bottlenecks everywhere, you will not ship anything.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, I have a question from Eduardo. What type of UX research do you consider the most useful in your job?
Good question. There's all sorts types of research. A lot of times the research we're doing at AHA anyways is it's really from the design standpoint. So we like to get prototypes put in front of our users and then have them click through it with very little instruction from us, obviously, but just to tell what is more usable, what's more friendly, what's more beautiful to our users. Because when you think about design, even a simple screen, there's lots of different ways you could design how to do a task in AHA. So for us, we get a lot of value of really getting the prototypes in front of as many users as we can to really understand, what makes sense, what's the easiest. They didn't have any questions. They made it through in, very little time. All these sorts of key indicators. At my last job, building banking products, we also did a lot of prototypes and put them in front of users, but we also just spent a lot of time interviewing people. So like even on Hangouts like this. And because money is such a personal thing, we really need to get into the mindset of how people save, and, they have 2 kids and how are they saving for college, and like all these different things. So it was more discussion based, and we would always write up interview guides. So we kind of have the questions we want to go through, but then we just let the conversation kind of guide itself. And we got tons of value that way, because you would get into these really interesting things about, money, where people view money very differently, and it's different for every individual, every household. So for us, that was really important, just having discussions. We also did lots of prototypes, like I said, but we found way more value in just discussions. And then as product managers, we would take these lengthy, all of our notes that we wrote up, pages and pages, and then we would make a summary document. So we would kind of work together and make a 1 or 2 page synopsis of all the findings, and just kind of pull out quotes and kind of the key findings that we had from that session. And then we would make that PDF document available to everyone. So it's a really great way for you to do the research as a product manager, and then digest it down into something that's really easy for the rest of the team to digest, so they don't have to go look through 8 pages of notes.
Yeah. Okay, good. I have a question from Jeffrey. How do you validate the approach of a feature, user and business point of view, before you engineer it? So, and what's your role in that stage?
Good question. Yeah, validation is huge. A lot of that does happen when, there's different types of validation. One is just like, should we build this thing? Does it make sense for AHA to build this feature? 300 users maybe have voted on it or said, we want this. We have to ask ourselves, does it make sense? How do we validate this? A lot of that does come from the users themselves by, we can see all 300 people who have voted for it. And some of you all are way more vocal. You'll leave lots of comments about thoughts you have for this idea. A lot of times our product managers will reach out to those individuals and get on a hangout or something like this and talk to them to really validate, again, not the solution that they have in their head, but really just take a step back to figure out what problem are they trying to solve. And that's really how we validate ideas. It's like, is this solving a real problem? And if yes, does it meet one of our goals, or does it help us inch forward towards our strategy? And if that's also a yes, and we can map it, then it kind of is a no-brainer to work on it. And from there, then you get into, okay, we've decided it's it makes sense, it maps to one of our goals. Now it's just a question of priority. How much effort is this going to take? Is this an easy win that we can knock out in a week, or is this a big thing that's going to take an entire team and take a couple months? And that goes into your whole craft of prioritizing features as a product manager. If you can't map it to a goal, that's you on the product manager to decide, this is maybe still interesting, but it doesn't align for us right now. So I'm going to hold on to it, right? Maybe I'll revisit this in 6 months. Maybe I'll revisit it in a year. That's okay. Yeah. And I think sometimes as product managers, we think we always have to say yes or no. And I don't think it's, black or white like that. There is this kind of gray spot of, you can decide like, yeah, this is interesting, but not yet, right? And I'm going to come look at this again in 9 months and see if it makes more sense then.
Yeah, I see. And I guess sometimes you have product managers fighting for the same resources. I mean, engineering people. How do you battle the priorities?
Yeah, we totally do. I dealt a lot with that on my last team. At AHA, I'm not involved with that. I think the engineering leads divvy up the work. So unfortunately, they deal and struggle with that of assigning people and making sure the resources are allocated accordingly, all that good stuff. With that said, we certainly have conversations. If marketing has a big update that we want to make to the website and it's all spec'd out and defined, and we're hoping, or thinking, oh, I bet they'll get to this next week. Ron, who leads our product management team, he'll just ping us, or we'll have a conversation. He'll say, hey, Zach, who you need to do that, I've actually got him on this for 2 more weeks. Can you guys hold off on this? And we just have a real conversation, and, we'll say, no, we really can't. And, we'll kind of debate and make our case, right? And sometimes, often we'll say, oh yeah, that's no problem. We understand Zach's on that. So yep, pushing it back 2 weeks is fine. Other times we're going to say, nope, we really need this, and here's why. And then we'll work with Ron to figure it out.
Okay, nice. I don't know if I already asked you, what guides your product strategy? Where does the company product strategy come from? I think you talked a lot about the user point of view, but what does the company strategy come from?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of it does come from users. In some regards, they don't explicitly say it. But one thing you'll notice about AHA, the last couple of weeks, we've started to do a blog series on enterprise transformation. And this is a big, kind of silly buzzword. I mean, you guys can Google
I
it.
read about it. I was going to ask you about it.
Yeah, so I'll go into that a little bit. So enterprise transformation is kind of this latest buzzword. Maybe you guys have heard about it. Maybe you're going through a transformation at the place you work. But it can be called enterprise transformation, digital transformation, any of these things. But it kind of goes beyond the products and services you build. And it's more, when you're going through a transformation, it's more about, well, how does the company itself function, and how do they treat their culture, and how do they build products, right? So for the last, I would say, good year or so, we've been having customers tell us that they're using our tool to manage their transformation. And this is just through, support tickets that they send in, or on our demos that we do. So it just kind of became this theme. And I guess that's the best way to think about it. We recognize a lot of themes from our users, but this was something that users were telling us. And, it kind of blew us away. It's like, oh, tell us more about that. What do you mean you're using it to manage your enterprise transformation? And they would go on to tell us, like, well, we're using AHA to manage our, our software and our products, but we're also using it to manage how we function internally and how we're going to transform over the next year. So that was one big key indicator for us, that, man, all these big companies are using us for this thing called enterprise transformation. So that more or less then made its way into our strategy for this year. And that's why on the blog, you'll see kind of the weekly series now solely dedicated to enterprise transformation. We're trying to help companies all sizes realize AHA is a great tool to use for your product road mapping, but it can also be used to just manage how you as an organization and as a business function and work and think.
Nice. Can you? There were, I think it was, your CEO, Bryan the Half.
Yeah.
Who wrote about it? And he's speaking about three experiences. Can you elaborate a bit more about those three experiences?
Yeah, there's been a couple of blog posts on enterprise transformation. There's one that kind of breaks down the different types. So there's data, and there's solutions. So there's kind of these three pillars of different types of transformation. So the data one, just as an example, is companies that, and this is very resembles kind of the company I came from. So we were a startup, then we got acquired, and it's a big corporation. There were 6,000 employees, lots of different teams all across the US. Obviously, as a startup and the products we built that then got bought, we had our own, sets of data and our own data storage and all this stuff, right? Well, Jack Henry, that's the name of the corporation, Jack Henry and Associates. If you think about that, and they buy a couple startups a year, it seems like everyone has different data, right? So it's Jack Henry needs to go through this transformation of how do we marry up all this data together, right? We have this team we just bought, and they've got these beautiful products and their own customer base, but they have their own set of data. How can we use that data to inform this product over here that this other product team runs and manages? And rather than keep all that data separate, it seems so obvious when you say it, but it's really hard to do because it's lots of technical hurdles and all these things, right? But if we could marry up all this data, that would make all these hundreds of products better, right? Because we can see what product A is doing, and we can learn about it, and that may be an indicator for what we're doing on our product. And it sounds so simple, like marry up all the data, let everyone have access to it. But it's really challenging to do in a huge corporation. But that's one type of transformation. It's like organizations are realizing that they have lots of different data. Now, how do they marry that up so all employees, whether you're on customer success or you're on marketing or you're on the product team, how can we make this data accessible and get all of our employees to start thinking about data and understanding data? So that's one example of transformation.
Yeah, and in especially in large corporations, it's a lot of work.
Yes, and And that's literally why we've seen people who are signing up for trials and demos of AHA with the job title as like Chief Transformation Officer. And you know, job titles are goofy and they get silly, but that's really interesting, right? That we're now in this place where people are, because it takes so much time, like they're hiring people and teams to make sure that happens over the next, you know, 1 to 2 years, right? So I think we're going to see more and more people with job titles like that who are in charge of transformation of some sort.
Okay, thank you for that comment. I have another question from Eduardo. How do you align remote teams to your product vision on a daily basis? Do you do stand-ups? Do you do other things?
Yeah, really good question. So we, a couple things. One, since everything is in AHA, everyone, you know, there's a strategy section within AHA, and then from there you can click into and see all the goals and all the strategy for the year, for this 6 months, next 6 months, etc. You can also see, like on the marketing team, I can see the marketing goals, but then I can see how the marketing goals actually roll up into the corporate strategy goals. So that's another thing with our goals, we can actually roll them up. So if I'm connecting this thing I'm working on to this marketing goal, I also know that, oh, good, that this marketing goal actually aligns up to, you know, higher up the chain into our corporate goal. So everyone has access, just whenever they need to be reminded or they want to look at it, they can go look, obviously. But then every week we do all company, all hands. So every Friday we get together, the entire team, and it's recorded for those who miss it, because we, you know, some people are sleeping. It's the middle of the night for them. But it's each team gets up on a GoToMeeting and kind of shares, you know, their weekly work, and it's, you know, the latest metrics, how they're trending that week. And, you know, marketing, we're going to talk about people that converted into paid accounts, or how many people, how our digital advertising doing, things like that. Our customer success team is going to share information about, you know, how many trials signed up that week, how many, you know, enterprise rollouts did they do, things of this nature. So each week you're kind of getting this nice update from each team that just kind of keeps you on the pulse of like how we're trending and how those map back to the goals. And then I would say with individually on each team, like marketing, we do a weekly stand-up, and that's in the middle of the week. And then, you know, engineering, product, design, they all do, you know, some of them do daily, some of them do weekly. It's kind of up to the team and how they want to operate. So to kind of summarize that, there's 3 different ways I would say. You know, one, you can just go on your own because everything's in the tool itself and you can just look. So you're kind of constantly reminded of it. 2, our weekly meeting with the whole company gets together, and you're kind of given these nice weekly snapshots to kind of keep on the pulse. And then 3, teams decide how they want to work. So they do either do daily or weekly stand-ups.
Okay, thank you. What product-related or product management-related issues keep you awake at night?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I gotta think about it for a second. You know, I would say when I was a product manager, I mean, it still happens even on product marketing, but when you work to roll something really big out, and even if you've done testing and user research and all these things, sometimes as a product manager, you've been in the weeds on it so long, for months, and you're so kind of, you're married to it, you're just in love, you think it's going to be great, but there's always this fear that the adoption of it is not going to be great, right? That you could roll something out, this big new feature that is kind of a flop, right? That gets very little usage, and you know, some people use it, but majority, you know, overall, it's just kind of a flopper. And that always would just kind of, I don't know if it'd keep me up at night, but it's something kind of always tucked in the back of my head. Like, oh, I hope that doesn't happen. Like, we've worked so hard and the team has worked so hard on this, right? So you really want to, as a product manager, like make your team proud and to say like, look guys, you know, look everyone, we did something great. Everyone's loving this. Everyone's using it. But it would always kind of scare me to, you know, if we'd have those moments where people weren't rolling it out or weren't using it. But as a true product manager, I would kind of talk to myself and be like, well, that's okay. Because if they're not using it, that's just an opportunity to learn, right? So I kind of have these inner debates with myself, right? But if they're not using it, we can learn from it, and then we'll go from there. We may have to pivot, we may have to do something different, but like that's what product management's all about. Like ship something, learn about it, take that feedback back and just iterate, right? Circle, circle, circle. So I go through that a lot.
Can you share one of those failures, and what have you learned from it?
Yeah, we at the last company I was on, where I was a product manager, we rolled out. So if you think about like a mobile banking app, right, and you can take a picture of your check to have it deposited, we rolled out a new feature where we kind of replaced the technology we were using for actually the camera aspect. So before, when you get your check, you sign it, you lay it on the table, you get your phone, you're gonna take a picture of it, you'd kind of have to tap to make sure it's focused, and it was a little clunky. Like you kind of had to make sure it was right to then get a proper picture that would go through. We kind of replaced that technology with kind of think of it as like just this auto focus. It worked beautifully, where this autofocus, you didn't have to tap anymore. It would just kind of find the image, find the edges, and then it would snap the picture for you. And we did user testing, all this, and we loved it. We thought this new feature, everyone was going to rave about and talk about, like, oh, this is so great because it's so smooth and easy, right? Well, not that we were disappointed, but people could care less. Like, I don't even know if they noticed it, right? Because it just worked, and no one gets too excited about like cashing a check. Like, that's not a really cool thing. I mean, it's useful, right? But no one really gets excited about it. So I would say the product team was kind of disappointed. Like, we thought we were going to see more praise back, and like more people telling us, oh, this is great, I've been waiting for this, or like, oh, this is so much better. We didn't really hear that feedback. So it was a little disappointing of like, we worked so hard, we literally replaced all this technology and it got way technical. So to us, and it was a good reminder, but to us, it seemed like this huge deal. But to the market and to people who use the app every day, it was like, okay, great. Yeah, right. So that was a really simple example of just kind of getting over yourself and your ego. You may be really proud of something, but at the end of the day, it's about the users. And that may be great that you spend a lot of time in it, you replace all this technology, but your user doesn't care. If it's better for him or her to take a picture, great. But, give yourself a pat on the back, but then move on, right? Like, who cares how much praise you get for it? It was kind of the lesson, I guess, we learned.
Okay. I don't know what type of people we have in our audience, but what would you tell to a beginning product manager?
Oh, I would tell them to talk to as many users as possible, and talk to their different types of colleagues as possible. So lots of talking and listening. I think it's easy as a product manager, if you're coming in and you're new, to kind of sit in the product management camp. Maybe you're working with a few other PMs and you kind of follow suit to, their processes and everything they're doing. But, get up out of your seat if you're in a physical office and, literally go spend a week sitting by the engineers. You don't even have to be working on something together, but just like set up camp and work with them, right? You'll learn so much by just hearing them chat and then see what's up on their screen. And then you can ask them, well, what is that? What are you working on? What problems do you deal with? And then same with your users, like get with your users. It always astonishes me. We talk to other product teams or product managers and like, oh, how often do you guys do research? And they may say, oh, once a month, maybe once every 2 months, we'll do a big like research day, or we'll get with customers. And that just blows my mind. If I were still PM today, I would be trying to talk to customers, if not daily, weekly. And it doesn't have to be a big formal thing. I mean, it literally can be an email conversation back and forth, or happen on a Slack chat or something. But there's so much value in just listening to your customers, and then being able to distill that information down into something meaningful for the product team to act on.
Yeah, completely right. We don't listen enough to consumers, fairly enough.
Yep.
One question. How does your average day look like? Just curious.
Yeah, it's every day is different, as I'm sure it is for all of you. But today at AHA, like I kind of go through these. It kind of has a weekly cycle. So as I mentioned, we ship a new feature, a go-to-market, every week. Typically, that's on a Wednesday. This week, it's we had a holiday on Monday, so it's shifting till Thursday. But typically, at the end of the week on Friday is when we kind of get our positioning statement that I talked about earlier, kind of tightened up and approved. So between Friday and Wednesday, the product marketing teams, we write the blog posts, write all the social content, make sure the support documents are all up. And that sounds really simple, but there's quite a bit of work that goes into that. So the blog post goes through internal reviews on the marketing team. Bryan, our founder, his background is product marketing, so he approves everything, and we go through a review cycle with him. But in our blog post, we always have screenshots and or short little GIFs or videos. And I'm sure you can all relate to this too. But when you show a screenshot of this new feature, like it needs to look real, it needs to look relatable. So we actually spend a lot of time mocking up these screenshots. So we go into AHA and our staging environments, and we make sure it like makes sense, right? Like this new feature we're rolling out, like even the dates.
You don't have test data in there.
Yeah, right. It's like, no, that date says 2017. Like we can't use that because it's not 2017. Yeah. So we pay a lot of attention to these little details because we want it to make sense. And for you all, when you're reading it, to be like, oh, we want you to see how you'd be able to use it, obviously. So we spend a lot of time, but between, that Friday and Wednesday, that's kind of what we're working on, all this content to announce this big new feature. Outside of that, one of the things I kind of own or spend a lot of time on is we run a community forum called roadmap.com. Hopefully some of you may be members of it. It is a community forum. Great. There's a section for AHA, but it's really not meant as an AHA user forum. It's really a community forum for product managers. So there's all sorts of questions. There's a monthly jobs thread. So if you're looking for jobs, every month there's a new jobs thread that gets really great postings. I think last month there were, Zendesk, a bunch of other, kind of really hot companies were posting on there. But I manage that community. So if you go on there and look you'll see my face and my little avatar quite a bit. I'm answering questions, asking questions, encouraging other people to ask questions, all that sort of stuff. So I manage the roadmap.com community as well.
Okay, very interesting. I don't see any more questions popping up in the chat, so I think we can slowly come to an end. Is there something else that you want to share with our community, our little community in Belgium?
Yeah, I was just, obviously I talked a lot today about AHA and, even gave a plug for roadmap.com. I would just say, regardless of AHA or roadmap.com, it is such a great time to be a product manager. Because I think about that, like 5 years ago, roadmap.com didn't exist. And all these other things didn't exist, 10 years ago, right? Even all the great work that Mind the Product does. I've been to their conference. It was phenomenal. They have a huge Slack community. That's great. Like, there's such a movement now within product management, and people like Mind the Product they've laid that foundation. We're trying to do our small part with roadmap.com. Another site, I think it's called Product Craft from Pendo, just launched. I think it's productcraft.com. They launched a couple weeks ago. So whether it's, just diving into a community, whether it's on Slack or forums or these sites, like, you have all these choices now, and I think that's phenomenal. And same with tools. Obviously, I'm going to be biased and tell you should go sign up for a free trial from AHA. But regardless of AHA, there's plenty of great road mapping tools now. And back when I first started out in product management, that wasn't the case, right? Like, we were managing things with spreadsheets and PowerPoint decks, and it's just awful. So I just, I'm glad you all are interested in product management. I think it's great. And we should all celebrate, like, I know we have differences of, tool A versus tool B, and we can discuss that stuff all day long. But at the end of the day, we're all product managers. We want to build stuff that's great and usable for our users. And it's such a wonderful time to be a product manager. So I think we should all help each other out however we can and rally together and kind of make this thing what it is. So, yeah, just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think product management seems one of the booming
Yeah,
job descriptions in the next, at least in the last year, and at least it's one that cannot be replaced by robots still.
that's right. There's this craft and this art to product management. It's a beautiful thing. You really sit at kind of the middle of all these teams, and that's what I always liked about it. You know, you're kind of this centerpiece with all these different, you know, engineering and your users and your leadership team. So it's just a really beautiful place to be in. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Bryan.
Yeah.
So for our audience, those in Belgium at least, we have a offline product tank on the 28th of March in Brussels. Bryan, if you're in Brussels, you're always welcome.
I was just gonna say the next time I'm in Brussels, you guys, I will ping someone and let you know I'm there. So yeah.
So we will focus probably on service design, user experience. One of the guys that pinged me that was going to give a talk is looking at emotional intelligence in service design, which I'm very looking forward to it. So it will be fun. And I'm trying to set up the next AMA. And I'm in talking with Chad McAllister. I don't know if you know the name, Bryan. Chad McAllister has a huge podcast on product management. So he was happy to give me a word. So
Awesome.
We'll see. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was really fun. Thanks for having me, Eric, and thanks for organizing this. This is great.
No problem.
All right.